We are live.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our September Council meeting. I would like to hand over to Councillor Greg James to do a welcome to country.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe and my fellow councillors. Firstly, I pay my respects to our ancestors. I acknowledge our elders, both past, present and emerging. I would like to acknowledge the Eora nations and all its people whose land we meet on today. So on behalf of the Elders Council, the 16 family groups and the 8 respected tribes who proudly share in the status of traditional owners of this land, I say a very warm welcome to this wonderful land, country and waterways. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to acknowledge that we, Greater Shepparton City Council, acknowledge the Audit peoples of the land, which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay our respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture, and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Before we do open the meeting this afternoon, on behalf of my councillors and myself and council as a whole, we would like to acknowledge and thank the amazing efforts by so many across our community. GB Health, all the essential workers, the incredible volunteers that supported those in isolation, those that needed extra support, and continue to do that across our community. And to that we say thank you. Our community should be really proud of how we have responded to the COVID-19 outbreak in our community. We need to continue to be vigilant and to do the things we need to do to keep our community safe. We'll now move on to our meeting. Item 3 is privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. Governance principles. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9-2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are listed in the agenda from 1 to 9. Councillors, do we have any apologies? Councillor Jewell?
Yes, Mayor O'Keefe, I would like to move the motion that the apology from Councillor Summer be noted and a leave of absence be granted.
Thank you very much. All those in favour? Carried. Item number 6 is the declarations of conflict of interest. Do any councillors need to declare a conflict of interest today? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest at item 12.2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sarley?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd also like to declare a conflict of interest for item 13.3, Maud Street Mall redevelopment. I have an association with businesses in that space.
Thank you very much. And I also need to declare a conflict of interest with item 13.3, awarding contract number 2170, construction of the Maud Street Mall redevelopment due to a personal business within the mall. We will now go to the confirmation of minutes. Would the council like to move the recommendation? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the minutes of 17th of August 2021 council meeting as circulated be confirmed.
Very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor James. All those in favour? Carried. Unopposed. Item number 8, public question time, nil received. Item number 9, deputations and petitions, nil received. Councillors, we now go to page 8, item 10.1, Creative City Strategy. We also have a recommendation on page 8. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Spriggs.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council, 1, endorse the draft Creative City Strategy, and 2, support the release of the draft Creative City Strategy for final public consultation for a period of 3 weeks, commencing on 22nd September 2021 and concluding on 16th October 2021.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor James. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. This is a brilliant strategy. I'm very excited to see this one coming through and very excited to potentially be putting it out to the community to get the feedback on it. I've highlighted a few pieces of the report that I'd just like to read out. I think they summarise it quite well in a way that I really don't need to myself. So important points being there was extensive consultation undertaken for this draft strategy to be created, and it's now ready to be released to the public for a 3-week consultation and feedback period. I imagine I can speak for all of us when I say I look forward to seeing what comes out the other end of that consultation period. But I certainly hope that it's been, during the consultation period, it reached out to a very wide number of community groups and individuals that would be involved in this space. So hopefully this represents the consultation that was undertaken and the views of those people along the way. But a very strong message from the consultation is that council should not necessarily deliver the outcomes itself, but should provide leadership, advocacy and facilitation to enable the community to carry out that role. And I think that is one of the strongest things to come out of this. It's that recognition that the community has such capacity and potential, and it is at times, and in this instance, the council's role to just support that and walk along with it rather than to be in the front of it. So I'm very excited that that is really embedded throughout this strategy. One of the things I also wanted to highlight from the report is, I think when people think of the arts and they think of creativity, they often sort of have an idea of what that means in their head. And I think this creative city strategy really recognizes the diversity of what it means to have a creative city and to have the arts and creativity. It recognizes the really wide variety of businesses and industries that are creative by nature without even realizing it. It also recognizes the opportunity for innovation in areas such as town planning, building development and engineering, and the way that we can make every aspect of our city and our community and our lives creative. Creativity breeds all sorts of benefits as individuals, as families, as communities, as neighborhoods. And I think that the key components of the strategy, the way this strategy is designed, will really benefit and enhance all of that we already have and all that we can do. So very excited to support this and move this particular motion. And I look forward to seeing what the community think of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Yes, well, Councillor Spink summed it up perfectly in those comments, Mayor O'Keefe. Broad consultation occurred in March to April this year with a series of interviews and consultations with a broad range of stakeholders. The strategy for consultation includes a number of focus areas, of course, through art, culture, tourism, creative businesses and space. So that consultation process goes out for a period of 3 weeks. I encourage our community to have their say and provide us with that valuable guidance. It's a very, very important space. I'm very excited about, the championing the First Nations. So I encourage our people to be involved, my community, to be involved in this process too as well. So just looking forward to the feedback from the community on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just reiterating what our fellow councillors have said, that it's sometimes, and what's come out of this particular strategy is that council sometimes need to get out of the way and really let the creativity come through. That council can be there as leaders to encourage and advocate and to really set the environment for the creativity to flourish. But, sometimes council is just seen as statutory regulation and really that doesn't mesh really well sometimes with creativity. So it's really good that's been highlighted of what perhaps our role is in that. And, post-COVID particularly, we need to see, what creativity can come out of it. There's been creativity over the last 18 months internally. We now need to see what can come out of that. And what we can do from this is really recognise what we are good at, what we actually have here. And what we have here is, come and see Shepparton. I mean Greater Shepparton, that. See Shepparton, SEE, stay, eat, enjoy. See Shepparton and come along and do that. And really, as Councillor James highlighted, some really valuable points about what we are, and that is that, championing First Nations art and culture, further cultural tourism, which we've, it's certainly been undervalued through here, celebrating our diversity as well, and really supporting some of those creative businesses. So I really look forward to further development on that strategy. Thank you.
Very much. Would any council wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 13, item 10.2, the Aquamoose Master Plan. There is also a recommendation on page 13. Would a council like to move the motion? Councillor Dobson?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the council support the release of the Aquamoose Master Plan for public consultation for a period of 3 weeks, commencing on 22nd September 2021 and concluding on 15 October 2021, and note the expansion of the warm water pool, that's the hydrotherapy pool, associated change rooms and additional all abilities parking as priorities of the master plan.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sarling?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. We all know that Aquamoose is an iconic site within Greater Shepparton. Its predecessor was the old swimming pool. It was originally part of the Victoria Lake. And over the years, under the guidance of architect Ray White, the Aquamoose, as we see it today, was put together. But as time goes on, we need to review. We need to review some of these issues. And it was identified through the master plan that each area of the centre is now oversubscribed and it's operating near or at capacity. It's clear that prior to any expansion of the centre, the major identified car park issue and the lack of spaces must be resolved. And car parking is an issue and continues to be. The main part of the master plan talks about the redevelopment of the hydrotherapy pool, as well as additional accessible change rooms and car parking to meet the needs of the community. And councillors had a visit to Aquamoose the other day, and we saw at first hand what that hydrotherapy pool is and the need for it to be expanded and improved. The reception area needs to be redone. And this is an interesting one and a very important one. We need a fit for purpose program pool to facilitate learn to swim programs. Now, amongst all of that is we've got to understand that COVID-19 has played a big part in where we're going these days. And while the efforts to re-establish participation and revenue continue, it remains important to plan for future growth and responding to the needs identified in the master plan. And COVID-19, as we all know, has brought something into our community that we're quite uncertain, makes us quite uncertain. And council officers continue to monitor opportunities as they are announced. Now, the issue here is that we're asking for this plan, this master plan, to go out on public display for feedback from the public from the 22nd of September to 15 October. And we want direct contact with previous agencies and user groups, and feedback will be considered as a future planning for the staged delivery of priorities. And we've got to remember at all times that that any new development will be dependent on what funding we have available at the time. So this is the first part of it. Send it out to the public, see what the public say. We want the public to have a big contribution to this, because then that will help formulate where Aquamoose will go in the future. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sarling, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. And look, obviously backing up some of the comments that Councillor Dobson's put forward, that, you know, the last master plan for Aquamoose was done back in 2005. So for many reasons, it's very important that we progress and continue to update that space there. As Councillor Dobson alluded to, I don't think too many people within our community would have experienced a good time at Aquamoose. So, you know, it's arguably one of our best assets, community assets that we have. So it's important that we continue to maintain that. Councillor Dobson obviously alluded that COVID has an impact, but pre-COVID, Aquamoose would often have over 650,000 visitors per year, and adding to that, a part of that, 95,000 visitors would come from outside of Greater Shepparton. So not only is it appealing to our own community, but also those outside of Greater Shepparton. Also adding, since 2005, over $5 million has been spent at that space as well. So as we move forward, we need to be ready. And this master plan is more of a medium to long-term master plan as well. And it identifies a number of needs, which Councillor Dobson outlined in his report. Just also like to acknowledge that, yes, the master plan was put together of some consultation pre-COVID. And, you know, there is quite a substantial budget associated with that. So I acknowledge that, but I think the most important thing is that we need direction. We need to have things on the table to work towards. And as we move forward, and I hope we can achieve a lot of these things that we've put in place with the master plan. If our financial position doesn't allow it, my opinion is we just don't do it. It's that simple, but we need to have a goal. We need to have direction and something to work towards. And then we assess our financial capabilities when we get to that point. The priority of the master plan is get it on the table, get it out to the community for some additional feedback. Let's move on. And then what we can then do is work towards seeking appropriate funding to have some of these projects achieved. Thanks.
Very much. Thank you so much, Councillor Sally. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Before I get to my points against, I want to make a couple of things very clear. I acknowledge and respect the amount of work that has been put into this document by council staff and the consultants. I know how essential Aquamoose is to our community and well beyond, and I strongly and immediately support the need for the hydrotherapy pool, the associated change rooms and the accessible parking upgrades to be undertaken as a priority project, regardless of the master plan progressing or not. But for the purpose of debate, I do not support this motion, as I do not believe that the Aquamoose master plan is ready to be presented to the community. It has been discussed that even during the time in getting this master plan together, it has undergone numerous changes. And in the past 2 years, the world has changed even further. The way that we use Aquamoose has changed. Over the last 2 years, Aquamoose has suffered extended closures as a result of COVID. And at this point, we don't have enough information on whether its usage and costs will be the same in a post-COVID world. And we aren't able to tell that information until that world exists. And it should also be asked, because of COVID, whether investment in outdoor community facilities such as exercise equipment or walking paths and splash parks would instead be money better spent. Also, as taken from the report, it is acknowledged that there is a nationwide shortage of learn to swim instructors that contributes to limitations in accepting enrolments, and that continued competition from private fitness centres and a shift away from centre-based health and fitness participation accounts for a reduction in gym membership as well as gymnasium and group fitness class participation. We know the world is changing, but I would argue that this master plan does not consider adequately for what that really means. As well, the consultations and research that contributed to this master plan was based from 2017-18 data and 2019 consultations. And quite frankly, I consider that to be outdated. It does not reflect the most recent usage patterns and needs of Aquamoose or of our community. I recognise that as a master plan, it's an aspirational document and that it's not a guarantee of projects or timeframes to be delivered. However, a core component of my argument is that I do not think this master plan is ready to go to community yet. While I completely agree that community consultation will be necessary before final endorsement and that Aquamoose needs a master plan, if today we pass it through to that step, then we're essentially accepting that as a whole, this is our plan and that we are happy with it. And we could pass an imperfect plan through with the specifics to be dealt with in the future, or we can decide today that through no fault of anyone's, it needs more work. I argue that this master plan as it stands today is not based on the best information available, and as I do not feel comfortable that this plan best represents the needs or interests of the community in 2021, I do not support passing it to community consultation today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Councillor Spinks. Would any councillor wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. And thank you, Councillor Spinks. You've certainly highlighted a few things in the master plan that we still need to look at, and I agree with you on some certain aspects of that. There is an expectation, though, from the community that we do move on with that. It's been fairly romantic in terms of remembering Raymond West, as Councillor Dobson pointed out. And of course, we do recall that it was at one stage the biggest pool in the Southern Hemisphere, although it was linked in with the lake as well. And of course, you know, you had Buddha McGurgan coming off the top of the high diving tower with his bike. but there were also some unmentionable floaties that used to go through there. So the romance sort of dies away a little bit, and we still need, and we have got a fairly modern and contemporary building there that needs to be updated. It does need to have a gym that's 24/7 as opposed to just opening, to be in line with other gyms and that. It needs to be more accessible and more inclusive as well. Car parking is going to be a big issue, and it is a concern of mine, particularly about where we're putting extra car parks. We don't want to lose the ambience or the aesthetics of the place and the greenery that surrounds it as well. That's really, really important. But it's a balance, as what Councillor Spink pointed out, but it's a balance between needs and wants. There are certain needs, and this is what's been prioritised, that as needed at Aquamoose currently, and there are some wants that we want, which forms part of the master plan as well. Yes, we need the hydrotherapy pool, certainly upgraded, expanded. Swimming classes are an absolute priority and what gets people in there as well. Rooms for the physios that come in there, there are some there, but they need to be enhanced as well. So we need to look at all of that in a master plan. What we do need is let's get it out to the public and particularly the user groups, and to hear back what they think of the master plan, and then we move forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Priestley.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Firstly, I wish to note the importance of Aquamoose, the value and the dedication of the staff that work there, and its important role in the future of our community, and thank all of those that have contributed to the development of this plan. However, I wish to speak against this motion as I have some concerns with the master plan that both require further investigation before we take action. Firstly, the master plan has been largely developed without taking into account the effects of the pandemic. The medium and long-term effects on the Aquamoose are not yet known, but it's possible to envisage scenarios where the physical requirements and the community needs of the facility are quite different to what's in the master plan. The demographics underwriting the plan are pre-pandemic. Anecdotally, our population growth rate has radically changed. Design, we don't yet have the important design principles that will come from the COVID experience. The first carbon neutral aquatic facilities are being designed now. This facility will need to meet that criteria in the near future. Secondly, the master plan lays out an investment of around $32 million of community's money over the next decade. While no doubt it will deliver a fantastic facility, personally, I don't yet have adequate visibility on how to balance this possible investment against other possible community needs. I understand the master plan doesn't commit council to the investment, but it does raise community expectations. I would prefer further work balancing community's total needs before putting in place a plan that may not reasonably ever be able to be delivered. Finally, I also note the immediate challenge of increased demand for the warm water pool access. This is a highly valued service for those undergoing physio, surgical recovery, and many in our disabled community. This is not an either or decision. Council are able to pause development of the 10-year plan while progressing an emerging and immediate community need. Lastly, we're all living busy lives with commitments and lots of information overload. When we ask our community a question, we need to be really sure that it's necessary and that we've thought things through. So it's my view that it's not the best approach to go out and consult with community on a plan that is developed pre-COVID and without visibility on how it sits with other demands from the community over the next 10 years. Let's sit tight for 6 or 12 months and then decide if we need to refresh this piece of work. And by then we'll better understand what the community can afford on aquatic facilities in the medium term and a clearer understanding of what a facility's needs are in a COVID era. In the meantime, let's get on with the work of planning the expansion of the warm water pool.
Would any council wish to speak for the motion? Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Just before we go to the vote, I mean, I would hate to think that we have to put on hold some extreme priorities for our community, and coming out of COVID more than ever is probably one of those strong reasons why we should. So I'm absolutely supporting what the recommendation is, and two of those things is obviously one, putting it out to consultation, and the other is noting the priorities for the community. And to think to put that on hold for 6 to 12 months, we know people are going to be wanting to come back and use our facilities. Yes, there's still some work that needs to be done, and obviously there's some facts and figures, but this is a master plan that is still quite movable. You know, we need to really work with what is ahead of us as well as what we are prioritising here today. So I will be supporting this recommendation. So we'll now go to the vote. All those in
Sorry,
favour?
Mayor, right of reply.
Oh, sorry, right of reply. Sorry, Councillor Spinks, right of reply.
That's me.
Oh, sorry, Jeff. Sorry, you have right of reply. Sorry, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I fully appreciate and acknowledge the two speakers who are against this particular motion. Both of them have put very sound arguments, but the fact is we've got to move forward. Whatever master plan we put now or put in a couple of years' time, we'll have some differences. But there has been some community feedback already. There's been a lot of work done, a lot of research and analysis being done already. And the most important thing is that we've got to have a master plan that we can put into sections. And this master plan does that. I mean, we don't have to spend the whole of the $32 million that Councillor Priestley talked about. We can only spend what we have in the bank. So knowing that COVID will have some impact, but I think this is for the future. This is for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so I believe we've got to get underway. Let's see what the community thinks. Let's see what the community says we should be doing. And then if we have to make some changes to the plan as it stands at the moment, let's do it. But let's get on with it.
Okay, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, we now go to page 21, item 11.1, contracts awarded under delegation, August 2021. There's also a recommendation on page 21. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor James? Oh, you're on mute, Councillor James.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the motion on 11.1, page 21, which is contracts awarded under delegation August 2021.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Someone like to second that motion for me, Councillor Sarley? Councillor James, would you like to speak to them? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say I'll second that motion.
Been a bit quick. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. The first part of the contract, I'll read the recommendation out. Note number 1, note the contracts awarded under delegated authority by the Chief Executive Officer, and 2, requests for tender advertised but not yet awarded. The first part of that, a contract awarded under delegated authority by the CEO, is for the East Bank refurbishment, and that's for the old SAM building. And the second part of that is there is 14 requests for tenders advertised but not awarded at this stage. These tenders are evenly spread across our region as well, Mayor, our communities, ranging from upgrades, new designing, surveying, investigations and construction works. So there's a total of 14 of those. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Starling, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. Look, not a lot more to add to there because there's only one contract that's been delegated by our CEO, which Councillor James alluded to, but a number of other tenders that are advertised but not yet awarded. A couple of them, Takshura Marutma Community Infrastructure Needs Assessment, the Wellsford Street Stage 5 design, and there's 10 or 12 others there as well. So hopefully in the coming months they'll move up to the awarded stage, and we'll have a bit more detail to share.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would the councillor like to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 25, item 11.2, the August 2021 monthly financial report. There's also a recommendation on page 25. Would the council like to move a motion? Councillor Dula?
Thank you. I would like to move the motion that the council receive and note the August 2021 monthly financial report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Priestley. Councillor Abdallah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, August financial report, it basically presents the year-to-date performance for the first 2 months of this current financial year. And because it's just the start of the financial year, we have to keep monitoring how it evolves and what factors influence the actual performance compared to the budgeted values. Now, looking at this August report, the key performance financial indicators such as working capital and loans as percentage of rates, they are all within the satisfactory range, no alerts as such at this stage. Our loans and borrowings as percentage of rates is 28.2%, which is within the target band, and it is same as what was budgeted for year to date. Working capital is 318.73%, which is a bit too high, and I'm sure it will come down as the year goes by, but it is all positive. Capital work statement also shows some additions to capital grants, and it also reflects some unfavorable expenses due to projects that have been budgeted from the previous year. And total capital works program is now projected to be $71.2 million compared to $70.1 million in the budget. Cash and equivalents at the end of the year is looking at $21.8 million compared to year-to-date adopted budget of $22.7 million. Again, this will change over the course of next 10 months. And yeah, I think overall it's all looking satisfactory. So I'm happy to receive and note this report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Priestley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. So today's meeting's a little heavy on financial information, but we'll make our way through it. So under 11.2 on this heading, we've got a performance report on the past 2 months, and then in the following heading at 11.3, we close out last year's financial accounts, and then under 11.4, we do the first quarter review. So let's talk about this agenda item. Broadly, council operations have occurred on budget for the last 2 months. Some variations of note at the time of preparing the budget. It seemed plausible we would have a little less lockdown than has otherwise taken place as Delta has taken hold. So we see a reduction in Riverlink's revenue of $800,000 and Aquamoose for $330,000. On the other side, we've seen a bit of an uptick in revenue for planning permits as there's a lot of development activity occurring in the region. On the capital side of the budgets, we've seen a few additional grants come onto the books and a small number of budget items, capital budget items that were projected in last year and to finish close to the end of last financial year have come across into this financial year. So overall, you see a net modest improvement in our position, but a long way to go for the financial year.
Thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would a council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just one very interesting point. We discussed it this morning during briefings was that Greater Shepparton City Council is assisting Golden Valley Health in using the COVID centre down at the McIntosh Centre, and while we're getting some financial assistance for that, I think it needs to be stated publicly that COVID-19, especially the Delta variants, has brought into operation a lot of people and working in partnership. And the council, I think, council management especially, has got to be congratulated on putting themselves forward in helping out, and having the McIntosh Centre not being able to be used for other things. For example, the show this year, we can't go ahead with that. So we're using it for very good purposes. And so the $100,000 I think we've got from having our people down at the recovery centre is excellent. But the more important issue is that we're operating in partnership with the rest of the community to try and get through this COVID-19 setback.
Thank you so much. Would any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sarley.
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. Look, obviously a fair bit's been covered, but I just want to make mention, just some comments around our rates debitors, which are tracking well at the moment, just so the community have a bit of an idea that we've got 33,000 assessments at the moment. We have 258 on payment arrangements, but I just want to obviously make note that, you know, in what is still a very, very challenging time for a lot of people financially, that I want to remind the community that although 258 is a relatively low number compared to a total of 33,000, that we do have a hardship policy in place to assist you with paying your rates. So under these circumstances, when things are pretty tight at the moment, please do not hesitate to reach out to council. We're here to support you. There's a policy in place for that. So don't hesitate to reach out. Just want to make note of that.
Thank you, Councillor Sally. Any council wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 27, item 11.3, financial statements and performance statement for year ended 30th of June 2021. Would the council like to move a motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you. I would like to move the recommendation on page 27 as a motion, and I will read this motion, which has 2 points. Point number 1, that the council approve in principle the financial statements and performance statement for the financial year ended 30th June 2021 as attached to this report. And number 2, authorize the Mayor, Councillor Kim O'Keefe, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rob Priestley, and the Chief Executive, Peter Harriott, to certify the financial statements and to certify the performance statement in their final form after any changes recommended or agreed to by the auditor have been made.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Priestley. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. So basically, as part of its legislative duties, every year council is required to submit its annual financial and performance statements to VAGO, which is Victorian Audit General Office, and also to the minister, local government minister. The adoption of this motion will allow councils to action on one of the final steps in this long, tedious, and rigorous financial reporting process. This process is reflective of the strong principles of good governance, accountability, and transparency that we have in place at council. The annual financial accounts prepared by council's finance department have been audited by our external auditors, and this provides us the assurance that the accounts are materially correct. This year's financial reporting process involved 2 interim audits in 2021 and the final audit in August this year, where all the prior interim audit comments and findings were resolved. Council's Audit and Risk Management Committee also plays a key role in the financial reporting process. The current committee consists of highly skilled and professional external members who bring their independent opinions and expertise to the table. This committee is also includes the mayor and a councillor representative, which we have in the form of Councillor Priestley this year. Audit and Risk Committee presents strong oversight and its due diligence, which provides an additional level of comfort to council that the final financial statements do represent a true and fair account of council's performance. Audit and Risk Management Committee has reviewed these statements and recommended that the council approve the financial statement and performance statement and also certify the accounts. This report is very detailed, and the report includes detailed financial statements. It includes explanatory notes wherever the variance was more than plus or minus 10% of the budgeted value. The financial report, it also includes all the COVID-19 related impacts. And of course, as we have heard, that the biggest impact was on the user fee and charges due to closure of operations or due to restricted operations. Looking at the income statement, well, it shows that the actual surplus in the year ended June 2021, was recorded as $31.2 million compared to the budgeted surplus of $5.2 million. Looking at the balance sheet, it shows that the end of year balance sheet, it presented a very low risk working capital, which was 156% in 2021. The cash flow statement also, can I have additional time? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay,
So just quickly going through the income, the financial statements, where the cash flow statement is showing that cash at end of year was approximately $42 million, which was more than the budgeted value of $10.2 million. This was largely due to 50% early receipt of federal financial assistance grants and various savings in employee costs and materials and services. And finally, the capital works statement showed that 82% of adopted budget was delivered, and the renewal and upgrades as a percentage of depreciation was 80%. So all in all, based on the expected audit opinion, which is that the financial report and performance statement is presented fairly, I'm very comfortable with the financial reports and also with the financial statements that have been presented. Also looking at the performance statement, which basically includes key performance indicators based on the Know Your Council framework. And it's really it's a very interesting read, and it gives insights into Council's performance in service delivery, in its financial performance, and also its sustainable capacity. It gives an insight and some indication of Council's sustainable capacity. There are measures of key performance indicators, and any variations between the target and the actual value has been explained in the comments section. So overall, I am satisfied with the financial reporting process and the financial and performance statements representing true and accurate picture of Council's performance. I endorse this motion, but at the same time, I'm also very keen to say a huge thanks to our Council's finance department and finance manager, Matt Jarvis, and his team for their professionalism and attention to details and the rigor that they bring into this process. So, and I would also like to thank the Audit and Risk Management Committee for their oversight and due diligence in this year's annual financial reporting process. Overall, I endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Precy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Today is the culmination of a massive amount of work by the finance team at Council, with significant input from Council auditors and the Audit and Risk Management Committee. I wish to congratulate all involved in the preparation, review and delivery of all of these documents. And note, the Council has received a tick for good process from each of these groups. To get such a clean bill of health from auditors is no such thing, and many organisations will be envious of that position. The document's freely available on the web, but if you don't want to trouble yourself with the 390 pages of attachments to tonight's agenda, I'll just say a few comments of note. Firstly, out of the 76 local government areas in Victoria, Greater Shepparton was one of 4 local government areas that did not increase rates, 4 out of 76. Next, let me say about this financial management of Council. After a period of time here and a year on the Audit Committee, I now have a sense of the culture in this organisation. The culture of the organisation around probity, fairness, proper process, transparency, the rule of law. That culture is very strong on these matters, and that is no small thing. These things can be written down, but the culture, this stuff starts at the top. So credit must be given to our CEO. Congratulations, Peter, on leading the organisation in an exemplary way on these matters. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 30, item 11.4, the Q1 forecast review for 2021-2022. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
Sorry about the delay.
You're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thanks. So I would like to move the recommendation on page 30 as a motion, and I would read the recommendation. that the council adopt the revised forecasts identified by the 2021-2022 Q1 forecast review and adopt the following amendments to user fees and charges. Vet care microchipping current amount $28.5 including GST, amended amount $28 including GST. Septic tank plan retrieval fee, current amount $30 excluding GST, amended amount $33 including GST. And indexation of various statutory fees and charges for 2021-2022 as gazetted by the state government.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dobson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you. So Local Government Act requires council to provide a quarterly review of financial performance and forecast year-end position. The quarterly financial performance review allows councils to compare the budgeted revenue and expenses with the actuals. And of course, a review of forecast year-end position is all about prudent financial management, and it ensures that council is aware of all the risks or potential and known and unknown potential financial risks. So according to this recommendation, Q1 forecast has been done, and some main points are here. First of all, there have been some minor changes to user fees and charges, as I have said while reading out the motion here. And the other aspect is, of course, of the review is that the COVID-19 impacts have been reviewed. And as we have seen in our previous motions, that due to the lockdowns and closure of council services, such as Aquamoose and river links, user fees and charges forecast have reduced compared to adopted budget. This impact needs to be monitored closely throughout the year because given the situation that we are in. Again, another point in this forecast review is the income statement forecast review. It is showing that accounting surplus is forecast to increase by 17.9% compared to the adopted budget, and which is mainly due to increase in capital grants and major increase in operating grants, as well as some minor decreases in employee costs and expenses, other expenses such as internal audit cost that has been reduced. So overall, underlying operating result is $269,000 better than the adopted budget, but it is still an operating deficit. Looking at the balance sheet, it is forecasting a stronger working capital, which is current assets as a percentage of current liabilities. It is projected to be 156% compared to 132% in the adopted budget. So that's another aspect of the forecast review. And cash flow statement is showing that the forecast is basically, it is at a steady balance at $19.13 million. Our capital works statement is forecast to increase its capital works program by $1.07 million, which is mainly due to rebudgeting of some of the projects that were budgeted for last year, but they have been rebudgeted to this financial year now. And what else? Renewal and upgrade works as a percentage of depreciation is forecast to go up to 154%, which is really good. It's a positive sign. So the report shows the details of all the projects where expenses have increased or decreased, along with the reasons of variation. But yeah, basically that's all about the forecast that I wanted to highlight. And all in all, I endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Councillor Abdullah has really summarised it very well, but I just wanted to highlight again the dreaded COVID-19 rears its head again, and the report says that that the adopted budget is the cost of COVID is approximately $1 million at this stage. But the interesting part that the report also says, not including additional support provided to the community in the 2021-22 adopted budget. And from the discussions that we seem to be having over the last week or two, and the amount of time we've been taking up understanding where this community is in terms of COVID-19. The council is really supporting the community more and more over COVID-19. And my belief is that that support will be required, as Councillor Sali suggested about the rates. I think we'll be assisting the council more and more over the next 2 or 3 years, because this is a slow recovery. We've been affected, the community's been affected, and I think we've got to maintain a very conservative attitude going into the future. And that's all on the basis that there is no rate increase this year. So it's going to be a demanding year, be a demanding 4 years. But I think, as has been suggested before, that our council management is in the right hands, and prudent accounting and proper management will get us through all this. And I appreciate what they've all done. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 33, item 11.5, the Council Plan 2020 to 2021, the Q4 Progress Report. There's also a recommendation on page 33. Would a council like to move a motion? Someone like to move that motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation that of 11.5, that the council receive and note the Council Plan 2020-21 Q4 Progress Report as attached to this report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Priestley. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. So this is Q4, so the last quarter. Beyond the premiership quarter, it's the last one, finishing it off from the council plan. And when you think about it, it was a 4-year plan. We're just about to embark on ours as well, as the new council. But the 4-year plan is, when you think about it, is half in COVID, nearly half not in COVID. And so, you know, the achievements that have been able to, and projects, each initiative, each project is really a credit to not only the council directors, but also the staff and the public, to be able to get this up and running, you know, in that particular period of time. There's some big ticket items in there, and at the top of the list is obviously the construction of the new SAM. We see it. We just need the damn thing open now, post COVID, so that we can actually, you know, celebrate it. But you know, there are a number of things in there as well. One of the things that's been pointed out in the plan was that 39 out of the 52 measures of success have been achieved. And I think this is a credit to it, you know, given the fact that, you know, we have been in lockdown, we haven't been able to get some things done. Most of these things are infrastructural things and capital things. And as I said, it's an absolute credit to the Director of Infrastructure in that area too. The achievable measures of success is what the key performance indicators are. And we need to be very mindful of that in going forward with our new council plan, which we'll get to. We need to be measurable, we need to be realistic, and we need to put in place what can be achieved in the next 4 years. But a credit to all those who've been able to put to bear this particular council plan in that particular period, and particularly the Q4 and the progress of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Priestley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just briefly, firstly, echoing Councillor Brophy's comments that, you know, this is the final instalment on the last council plan, and that given a very difficult time, I think council officers can be congratulated to going pretty near to the mark. 39 out of 52 at first glance doesn't sound like resounding success. Having said that, there's really quite a large number of the KPIs that can't be achieved in a COVID environment. And, you know, they might be things as simple as how many people are allowed to or have attended the library during that period of time, which given extensive periods of closure, those numbers can't happen. The other thing that I'd make the point of is as part of the development of our new council plan, I've spent a bit of time online looking at other council plans, and really quite surprised to see how much more ambitious both the past and the new council plan is in terms of the very specific KPIs we set for ourselves here, compared to some much more generic and less aspirational goals of some larger municipalities. So I'll leave it at that, but I think well done, and yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would a council like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Many in the community think that council is roads, rates and rubbish. But when you look at this plan and the 5 themes, we're a long way away from that. Leadership and governance. And there's been a lot of talk this afternoon about good leadership and good governance. The social aspect, the social theme. And this is an important one that we've been working on very heavily, and that's to develop resilient, inclusive, healthy communities that make Greater Shepparton a safe and harmonious place to live, work, learn and play. And with our community the way it is, diverse community the way it is, and I think this council actually, in Councillor Orr's cohort, represents a diverse community. An economic build a thriving, resilient economy. And again, we're going through COVID-19, and we're very mindful of that problem that we have, and building relevant infrastructure that makes Shepparton an attractive city. And we're doing that also. We've got SAM, and we're looking at the master plan at Aquamoose, for example, and we're putting in the Maud Street Mall, and we're redeveloping the other areas of Maud Street. We're making this a modern city, and I congratulate our management team on their tree initiative. I think Pete Harriott, our CEO, was the person who really has been driving that, and it makes Shepparton a standout and unique place to be. And that leads to the number 5 theme, and that's the environment, to enhance and protect a clean, green environment. And with the way Melbourne's going at the moment, we're going to be, over the next few years, hopefully, attracting a lot more people from the metropolitan area, as is every other municipality around country Victoria. So we've got to provide a clean, green environment and to encourage people to be coming into the Greater Shepparton area. So they're the themes. As I said, more than roads, rates and rubbish. We're there right across the community doing all sorts of things. And I congratulate the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 37, item 12.1, the Greater Shepparton Heritage Advisory Committee, a nomination of community representatives. There is also a recommendation on page 37. Would a council like to move a motion? Councillor Dula.
Thank you. I would like to move the recommendation on page 37 as a motion, and I'll read this one, that the council appoint the following community representatives to the Greater Shepparton Heritage Advisory Committee for a term of 2 years, commencing on 20th September 2021 and concluding on 19th September 2023. Cole Bronin, Markham Andrew, Perry Roger, and Slee Robin. Number 2, formally acknowledge the 3 outgoing community representatives, being Leah Byrne, Carrie Donaldson, and David Vaughan, and thank them for their work. And number 3, note that Andrew Markham and Robin Slee have reapplied for a community representative position, and that Jeff Minard now represents the Shepparton Heritage Centre, which is a founding member organization of the Greater Shepparton Heritage Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brophy.
I'd like to second that motion, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dollar, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, this committee, Heritage Advisory Committee, is about everything to do with preserving our cultural heritage. All matters related to cultural heritage within the municipality are considered by this committee. This committee consists of many passionate community members and representatives of historical societies across the municipality. So I'm very pleased to see that, that there will be 4 new committee members on this committee, and the committee members are inducted for a minimum of 2 and a maximum of the committee members are basically composed of historical societies and also community members. And there can be a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 6 community representatives who are not associated to any of the historical societies. So it is great to see that we have 2 members who reapplied and who have been recommended for this committee, and their names are Andrew Morcom and Robin Slee. And having worked with both these community members on this Heritage Advisory Committee, I'm really delighted to see that they have decided to stay on this committee because their contribution has been really invaluable. And also welcome other new members of the committee as per the recommendation in here. At the same time, I would also like to acknowledge the contributions made by the outgoing members, Lee Byrne, Carrie Donaldson, and David Gahn, for all their contributions. So a huge thanks to them. And of course, there's Jeff Menard, who was on the committee as a community member, has now been, is now a member of Shepparton Heritage Center. So he is representing Shepparton Heritage Center, but it is still, it's very pleasing to see that he is still on the committee in one form or the other. So all in all, a very exciting time to be on this committee because the committee has been involved in so many interesting and useful events of, when it comes to the preservation of cultural heritage in our municipality. So well done and congratulations to all. Thanks.
Very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just very briefly, I had the fortunate experience to be able to go along to the annual Bruce Wilson Memorial Heritage Lecture not that long ago. And the guest speaker being Ms. Chris Johnston, who I'm not sure of her official title, but other than being a cultural and heritage guru, and her particular lecture was excellent. And it really reinforced that even though we see Greater Shepparton as being a very contemporary and moving municipality, and we're not the Bendigo and Ballarat with heritage buildings, etc., there is so much here that we can really put up on a pedestal as far as our heritage and really acknowledge. And I think she really highlighted that to us. This particular group, I've met a couple of times, and we have some terrific advisory committees for Greater Shepparton. Their value is just incredible, all of these advisory committees. But this particular group is probably one of the most passionate groups of all. So I congratulate them, and I congratulate the new appointments and thank those who are moving on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I also was lucky enough to go along to the Heritage Lecture, and I have to say we've heard a lot about the Heritage Committee over the past few months. We've seen reports and that sort of thing, and it's always been really wonderful. They're an amazing committee. They're passionate and active, but it was at the Heritage Lecture that I really got to appreciate the knowledge and the genuine passion for protecting and embracing our heritage. And also, while we were watching, or at the end, we had a question session, and someone from online asked a question, and they were from a neighbouring municipality, and they asked a question about how they could form a committee like that because they had a building they were wanting to protect, and they didn't have the community support, which, quite frankly, I didn't realise. It's one of those you don't know until you know. And it was such a wonderful opportunity to realise that Greater Shepparton is so lucky to have these individuals and this committee fighting for this cause, because not everywhere has it. And I think it's a massive, it's very massively important to recognise how well Greater Shepparton Council supports that as well. It's not only the community members, but the council themselves are so willing to hear the needs and I keep saying passion, but the passion of the committee. And it really goes both ways. And we are so lucky and privileged to have that in our municipality. And I did not realize, and I do not think it can be undervalued. It is so important. And so to the members that are joining and the members that are outgoing to this committee, well done. I wish you luck in all the things that you are doing. And I'm just so excited to continue learning more about this committee and to see what they get up to.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Saleh.
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. Very briefly, and just to back up the comments of my fellow councillors about the importance of this committee, which has obviously been in place since 2012. I just want to again acknowledge those individuals that have and continue to give up their time to be involved in volunteer council committees as well. So thank you for that. And also acknowledge the work Councillor Abdullah and Councillor Summer do in their capacity as councillors sitting on that advisory group as well. So thank you for all involved.
Thank you very much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 12.2, the planning application 2021 to 35 for dwellings and a 4-lot subdivision at 189th Street, Shepparton. That is on page 42, and there is a recommendation on page 42. And I do note Councillor Brophy has a conflict of interest, so we'll put you in the waiting room. Thank you. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Priestley.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move a motion as per the recommendation printed in the agenda on pages 42 through 46 of the agenda.
Do I have a seconder?
I beg your pardon, 47, the agenda.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Priestley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Put very simply, this is an application for 4 double-storey units on Knight Street. Based on the large number of objections from the community, there's been substantial concern about this particular development. I think it's fair to say that the community were not expecting a development of this nature in this location. When deciding on whether or not to approve this application, council are able to assess this application against the rule book, the planning scheme. And that rule book's freely available for both developers and objectors to assess if council makes a decision within the rules or if in fact we end up doing something different. Councillors can make any decision we want today. However, both sides of this argument, having access and knowledge of the rule book, will quickly spot a decision that's not consistent with those rules. And if that decision is not consistent, it's a simple matter to appeal the decision to VCAT. VCAT quite simply check the council's homework by reviewing our decision, comparing the rule book to this application. If council have made an error and it's appealed to VCAT, council will most likely incur costs. These costs then have to be paid by council, and that's money that we don't have available for use elsewhere for our community. So for me, this application prompts a few questions. The immediate one, does this application comply? And after careful review, my view is that the application clearly meets the requirements of the rule book. The second question, are the planning scheme settings right for the residential growth zone? And is this information communicated well to our community? Sorry, I'm just moving the page a bit. I think that there is a conversation to be had about how we communicate the planning scheme so buyers and owners understand the type of development that can happen next door. Further, based on the community feedback about this particular application, I think we need to ask the question, do we have the settings right for the residential growth zone? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to say that as Councillor Priestley has highlighted, this is about a planning permit permission, a planning permit, which is required for the construction of 4 double-story 3-bedroom houses and the proposed 4-lot subdivision. The application has been assessed by the planning department, and after considering the relevant planning policies, laws are, and also all the objections that were received on this project, the recommendation is that the permit be granted. And it comes with an exhaustive list of conditions on the planning permit, which is included in this recommendation. Now, my understanding is that 14 objections were received on this proposal, which basically shows that some members of the community are concerned about certain aspects of this project. The officer's report that I have reviewed, it includes a summary of objections and corresponding responses to those objections. I understand that there are a couple of key issues. First one is relating to the overshadowing of the private open space of dwellings at 178 Knight Street. Looking at the response, I am comfortable that the way the response from council officers is showing the assessment that this overshadowing will be minimum in the morning, and later in the day, it would be mainly due to pre-existing conditions and not necessarily due to the proposed development. The other concern that I see is about the neighborhood character in Knight Street due to the presence of double-story houses. Well, again, there is an evidence that the neighborhood currently presents a variety of single-story and double-story houses. There are concerns that are raised around the traffic, increased traffic due to these 4 houses. Again, the assessment from council staff is that the Knight Street being a major road, it already experiences high volumes of traffic, and any additional traffic due to these 4 houses will be minimum in the overall scheme of things for Knight Street. Another concern that we hear every now and then on these type of applications is about the devaluation of property. Well, the reality is that devaluation of property is not a planning consideration, as has been emphasized by VCAT on various occasions. So while I acknowledge the community concerns and all these 14 submissions, I'm not convinced that these objections should be the basis of rejecting this application. I believe that the overall community benefits in this case, they outweigh the negative impact of the issues that have been raised. For example, currently we know that our region is experiencing a major issue of lack of housing diversity, where there is a shortage of low to medium density houses. I see that this proposed proposal will add to the housing stock diversity in Shepparton. Then, because this land, can I have a?
Do you want an extension, Councillor Doolan? Yes, sure.
Thank you. And because the land is located within walking distance of schools and public transport, open space, and the Shepparton CBD, I just want to recall that the community has been expecting from council to promote high density living in and around the CBD. The benefits of which are that it encourages foot traffic in the CBD, it encourages use of active transport as opposed to vehicles generating greenhouse emissions, and also addressing current problem of housing affordability in the region. So I feel that this proposal can contribute to all these aspirations. The proposed development, as Councillor Priestley has already highlighted, is in accordance with the relevant guidelines of the residential growth zone and the planning policy framework. So I feel that and to me, basically the litmus test is that if a permit is not granted and the case ends up in VCAT, there won't be much grounds to reject the proposal on the basis of planning laws and policies that VCAT will use to assess this case. So in addition to council's financial loss in this scenario, the housing market will also experience a disadvantage by delays in the construction of these 4 houses and getting them to market. So due to these reasons, on balance, I support the grant of planning permit. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Look, we've heard, some of those concerns, which was highlighted by Councillor Priestley and Councillor Abdullah. The number of residents that are concerned about this development for a range of reasons, of course. And I think we had, 14 objectors, which is quite a few, and this probably explains why it's come to us before us as a council. There are issues of shadowing, of course, as previously mentioned, to adjoining properties. And there's further increase in regards to traffic congestion. I mean, obviously, this development will further contribute to the traffic flow in the area. And it's estimated probably around about 6,000, people will be, accessing the vicinity of that, the Horde and Knight Street roundabout twice a day. So that's, there's going to be now a further increase of traffic, although minor, but it's still adding to the congestion. I think we'll see more of these proposals in the future. And look, I'm a supporter of urban development. I think that's great. But, we need that in our town. And I think that's great for our town too as well. But but obviously in the right location. I don't agree that is the right location. For this reason, as I mentioned before, in the concerns that I do have, I won't be supporting this recommendation. And you can see also that there's a number of conditions attached to the recommendation as well, which speaks a little bit about the actual proposal itself and the conditions. So no, I'm not prepared to support this recommendation. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. James, would any councillor wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Sally.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Look, as councillors have mentioned, in these circumstances, it's not uncommon to receive objections. And although I acknowledge those objections, this development meets the criteria to have this development take place. I also acknowledge Councillor James' views, but in my opinion, the challenging factor is that for developers to maximise their investment, two-storey developments would provide a better return, so hence the current design. But with most developments, and in particular two-storey developments, it raises concerns about not next door to me, which a couple of councillors have alluded to as well. With respect to those objections, when you live within the CBD, investment like this is more than likely to take place. So for the reasons it meets the development requirements set out by council, and adding to that have made a number of additional requirements which are in the recommendation towards the developer, which is addressing a number of concerns like noise and shade as well that have been alluded to by councillors. But I guess in a positive way, as Councillor Abdullah mentioned, this development will enable more people to live closer to the CBD, which is what we want to encourage, and obviously closer to our education precinct with arguably our biggest school development right around the corner. So for those reasons that it meets the building requirements and encouraging people to invest and live in our CBD, I support this motion.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak for the motion? Before I go to Councillor Priest's right of reply, I think this is always the tough times, when we hear from residents that are really strongly impacted from decisions that council made and developers make. And it's always hard because it's difficult when they have such a significant impact, or they're perceiving it as that way. I'm really pleased to see the efforts that the developer has gone to and the pages and pages within the recommendation, and obviously working with council as well. It's a really important thing. We can't, often fight against our own planning scheme, and it's these difficult ones. But I do have concerns in regard to the amenity and having, these double-storey 4 on one block. It is going to change the landscape of the street for sure. But is this the world we're living in? But I think my message is it's tough decisions. These are the tough calls that councillors have to make, and when it affects people, it affects us. On that note, we'll go to Councillor Priestley's right of reply. Would you like your right of reply, Councillor Priestley?
No, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Okay, we'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillor Brokey to come back in, please. Councillors, we'll now go to page 58, item 12.3, the zero emissions options paper. There's also a recommendation on page 58. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I move that the council note the implementation of the do all option in the emissions reduction option paper and the steps outlined to reach the 2030 zero emissions target.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Spinks. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
just briefly, Mayor O'Keefe, I thought the council was very brave last year in 2020 in declaring a climate emergency. It was thought at the time by some that the word emergency could have been a bit too harsh, but I think it sets out, as the world we know today and what's been happening today with around the world, that the climate really is in an emergency situation in many areas. And I think it's important that this council sets its targets and has a leadership role and setting a zero emission target for the 2030 zero emissions the policy. There's three options that we've been given, and one was a do nothing option, and I'll read it here. It says business as usual and purchase offsets for all emissions ongoing from 2030, which is a very low hanging fruit option, and it really doesn't mean anything. The second option was a do plan, implement already planned activities, including purchasing 100% renewable electricity, some building efficiency works and electric vehicles, then purchase offset remaining emissions from 2030. And again, I would term that quite a lazy way of doing things. It doesn't show any initiative at all. The third option we've called the do all, implement all emissions reductions options that are possible, leaving minimal offsets required to purchase from 2030. So what that means is that we, rather than just buy our way into this target, we actually set the pattern. And by setting the pattern for the community, I believe we're showing true leadership, and that's what a council should be doing. We've now got the trees that are being planted, a lot of our vehicles are electric vehicles, and of course we're doing a lot with solar energy at the moment. So I think that this policy is an excellent policy, and I'm going to and the do all option is the one that we should be going with. And for those reasons, I'll very happy to move this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Well said, Councillor Dobson. I think you highlighted that really well. And in the past, I've spoken towards, things of this nature, and I've always been pretty passionate about it. But I think it's also important to be very practical about it. And I think that this report, this paper, really highlights how we're going to go about that. So I'd like to read a few things that are really relevant from the report. The first bit being that do all is the only pathway that immediately addresses the risk posed by continued emissions to our community and reduces council's long-term financial risk of requiring expensive offsets to reach zero emissions by 2030 and every subsequent year beyond 2030. By implementing the do all pathway, council promotes leadership within the community, continues to showcase cost-effective actions that reduce emissions such as purchase of renewable electricity and adoption of electric vehicles. Our actions to reach zero emissions will continue to be shared with our community and industry to bring them along in the journey, and it adopts the most transparent path with integrity. So choosing the do all option is really unequivocally the best option. I'd also like to point out that under financial implications, there are no direct financial implications from this report. However, the implementation of the plan will have an impact on the budget. It's important to recognise that. But it is expected that the short-term costs will be offset by long-term savings from energy efficiency and avoiding catastrophic climate change within the community. The reality is that this is the world that we live in. The recent IPCC report highlighted that this is the time to be taking these actions, and council's always been almost ahead of the curve in this space. And this is simply us taking that next stage into leadership of what needs to be done and doing it, which is always very amazing to watch, really. I'm very proud of our council before I was on here and being on here. And there's a line here that supports that even further. The decision has also been recognised that it is not a matter of if, but when the whole economy is decarbonised. As the recent IPCC report has shown, time is running out. So this is our response, and I want to recognise the massive amount of effort that's been put in behind the scenes to create this document. The document itself is very extensive. And we have extremely passionate, knowledgeable and committed council staff that are working in this space to put this plan together. We're very lucky to have the staff that we do working in this space. So I'm very, very, very happy to endorse this plan, and I'm very proud and excited to see that we're not only doing it, but we're committing the whole way. We're going for it and we're going to get it done, and we're going to do it for our council and for our community and for our environment. So it's an exciting day to be able to pass this through.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. When you think about Australia and how we fit into the whole world play in regards to zero emissions, and we can be disillusioned in the fact that, you know, as far as a player in the whole global side of things, we can be fairly insignificant in that sense. But to do the right thing and to be a leader, you need to be a little bit brave, you're a little bit courageous, and you need to make the correct decisions. And I think in terms of council last year, the previous council who put this through, I congratulate them on that, because it was bold and it was courageous and it was being a leader in that particular space. And I think in terms of the options paper and regarding the do all is certainly a pathway by which we can now achieve what we want to achieve in that particular time. This is a council options paper and it is a pathway for council. But I'd like to also herald maybe the champions of change in our region as well, because if council do it just by ourselves, that's nice, but we actually need to bring everybody on board with us as well, the whole community. So we need to herald those champions of change, the ones that are in business in the region, the residents that are doing the right thing and trying to, you know, work on the zero emissions as well, organisations and also community organisations as well. Very much. We've already seen the shift in terms of our budget we put forward and the line items that were in each of the budget and how that impacted in regards to zero emissions with every line item going forward for the forthcoming year. And I applaud the finance department and certainly the executive and the CEO in putting that particular part forward, because that gives us, it was conscious, it was deliberate, and it gave us an understanding of the steps that we need to take in moving forward from a financial side of things. I also want to congratulate Sharon Terry and her particular team in council as well, who've worked really hard, explained it really well. They're passionate as well about this. I congratulate council in going forward with this, and very much look forward to getting on the right track here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Priestley.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just a few quick comments. Preparing for climate change, it is expensive. However, not preparing is going to be more expensive. We're doing our community no favours if we're pretending this change is not coming, both in terms of the climate itself, but also in terms of the political climate. Our customers, in terms of countries and companies and so forth, increasingly are going to expect this of our community, of our businesses. And so we need to be starting to put our community on the right footing so that we can still participate in the world economy. Our role is to be having the difficult conversations about what this means. It's going to be difficult. Doing the hard work and the research and the thinking about how to prepare our community to take advantage of the massive wave of change that's coming. Climate change is costly, but our community, led well, we can position ourselves to take advantage of these trends and at least get to participate in some of those benefits of being early adopters, not just suffer the costs. If we wait, eventually we will have to respond to the stick rather than the carrot, and those costs for our community will be greater than if we adapt early. I just want to read something briefly from the agenda. And when we talk about the do-all option, the do-all option will implement all financially viable actions over the coming 9.5 years to reduce emissions. So there's an ounce of reasonableness in there about how we go about this. So speaking, I guess, to the pessimists around the political atmosphere that talk about Australia or our community's small emissions and our change will have no impact, what I want to say to you is that even if that is true, Australia is part of a club that are increasingly taking this issue very, very seriously. And if we want to remain friends and partners, we need businesses and communities that are adjusted and adapted to climate change so that we can continue to participate. So even if you have a dim view of it, you will have a business view that says we need to deliver what our customers want. And that's what this community needs to be ready to do.
Very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Yeah, just to reinforce what other councillors have said, we've got a great internal working group that's been doing a lot of work in this space, as councillor has been said. Really excited about that, on where we're going, the future direction, and we have to move with that. I just wanted to point out that we've got 2 electric vehicles at the moment, which we're addressing in that space, with a further 4 or 5 to come later on. But that Climate Alliance network is really important as well in regards to working with DELP and working with parks. And I was really very excited that when we had the forest burn in between Shepparton and Maribna, that our internal working group were working with traditional owners in regards to fire burn process and the cultural burning and the practice of cool burning. So that's something that I'm very proud that our council and Sharon and the team are working with that in regards to emission reduction throughout our environment. We already have enough of that through our chemicals that are in our airspace. So we're looking at that too as well, but really pleased that our internal working group have done a lot of work on this, and really congratulate them on the work thus far. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thanks, I'll be quick. I mean, it's such a pleasure to be a part of this council and the council in the previous term that took this leadership and gave a strong commitment to this cause. And really just want to endorse everything, all the comments that have been made by my fellow councillors, and respect their sentiments. It's so important to see that this council is not taking any sort of ifs and buts kind of approach. It is dedicated, it's committed 100% to this cause, and it's really great to see the amount of work that our council staff has done. It just shows that how knowledgeable, how passionate, and how committed they are towards climate emergency and towards reducing emissions. So well done, and congratulations to everyone involved in completing this options paper. I fully support the do all approach, and also I'm looking forward to the zero emissions plan, which is going to be completed by December 2021, I understand. So yeah, so very delighted to be part of this council and the leadership. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I think everyone has pretty much spoken. All right, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 72, item 13.1, awarding of contract number 2133, provision of traffic management and control services. There is also a recommendation on page 72. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Saleh.
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move the recommendation as a motion on page 72 of the agenda, item 13.1.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Brophy.
I second that motion, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Councillor Saleh, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. Look, like most councillors, I get asked quite often by local businesses, how can I do work for council? And the easiest way to do it is to form part of the panel of contractors. And in this case, it's a panel of contractors for traffic management and control services. The tender was advertised across a number of platforms, including the Shepparton News, the Age, and Tender Search. And this particular contract is for 2 years with a further 2 by 1 year options. The estimated contract value is $848,000. So based on councillor approval this afternoon, the CEO will execute the contract documents, which will have a number of businesses added to the panel of contractors. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank
Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. This is normal process in terms of a number of the services that are provided by council, that they do have a plethora of particular contractors that they can call on at any particular time over that given period. They're put in their tender. We know what to expect from them. Sometimes it's great to have such an array of particular providers, because they may well be performing other contracts at that particular point in time, instead of having to either wait for them or to worry about how much they're going to cost to actually perform that particular thing. We already know that in advance, whether they're available, how much they're going to cost, and we can get things. It's just prudent, and it's efficiency. Thank you.
Very much. Any council wish to speak against the motion? Council wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 13.2, contract number 2001, Horden Street reconfiguration construction. There's also a recommendation on page 76. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Dobson.
I'd like to move that the council award contract 2001 Horden Street reconfiguration construction to Mawson Constructions for the lump sum price of $1,302,592.43, very important, including GST, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute the contract documents.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Spinks. Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. This body of work is centred around the opening of Greater Shepparton Secondary College on Horden Street, and out of the money, the 1.3 million, it is fully funded by under the Regional Roads Victoria, or the federal government's road safety program via Regional Roads Victoria of 1.5 million. And so it's part of our, I guess, subcontracting that we're doing the job for Regional Roads Victoria. There's a few things that's got to be done, and they've got to be done quite quickly, because the opening of the colleges in January of next year. There's footpaths, drainage and pavements, relocation of existing services, new drainage, new curbs, etc., etc. And there's also a requirement for an interim upgrade to the Knight Street roundabout to create a dedicated left turning lane back towards SPC, and establishment of signalised pedestrian crossing immediately south of about $100,000. We're going to, with the money that's left over, we're going to supply $99,000 worth of bus shelters, which is most important, and there's additional funding left over if we need to have a look at any other project costs. But the interesting thing about all those numbers is that I guess Greater Shepparton City Council is doing its bit to ensure that the Greater Shepparton Secondary College gets underway in January of next year. When you drive past there now and see the photos in the local press, they are getting on with it. It's almost completed, and it's a magnificent looking complex, quite unusual. I'm looking forward to getting inside and having a good look. I know there's been a lot of controversy around the project, but that's to do with the Education Department and not to do with the council. So our part is to actually do the works funded by the federal and state authorities. We'll get in and do the works because we're the best at it, and the people we are going to appoint are very good at the job as well. So I'm glad to see that we're able to do it within and under the budget allowance that was given to us in the first place. So I recommend the motion to council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you. I think Councillor Dobson covered that really nicely. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sarley?
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. Yeah, I just want to back up the comments of Councillor Dobson and reiterate how important it is for these works to be completed by the start of the year. So that was heavily detailed in the contract, and I'm very, very confident Mawsons will have that achieved before the school year starts next year. Just adding to that, and I guess I can probably speak on behalf of all councillors, there has been an enormous amount of work take place down Horton Street, obviously associated with the school. There's going to be some more works take place now with those couple of projects that Councillor Dobson alluded to. So please be patient. We're going to get through it over the next couple of months, and then when it opens, it'll be a much better space for all users of Horton Street.
Thank you so much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 80, item 13.3, awarding of contract number 2170, construction of the Moore Street Mall redevelopment. I'll be leaving the chair and asking Deputy Mayor to please run through this item. Thank you very much.
I obviously have a conflict as well, Mayor O'Keefe or Deputy Mayor Priestley, so I presume I'll go to the waiting room as well.
Out you go, Councillor Sarley.
Thank you.
Dear me.
Just hang in there.
I was going to say, am I supposed to do something?
Hey, we're back.
So
Do I?
perhaps Lingy or
Shane.
Mikey.
Do you want me to just get up and I can leave the room? That's probably easier. Should I do that or?
No, we're just working on it now, Councillor Sully. You have just zapped out, so there you go. We're right to go.
Very good. Okay, councillors, as Mayor O'Keefe mentioned, on page 80 of the agenda, is there a recommendation that a councillor would like to move? Sorry, a motion that a councillor would like to move. Thank you, Councillor Abdallah.
Thank you. I would like to move the recommendation on page 80 as a motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Councillor Abdallah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks very much. So this motion is supporting officer's recommendation to award the contract for Mott Street Mall construction to Jarvis Delahaye Contractors. I think I won't be exaggerating to call this a momentous occasion in the history of Mott Street Mall. It is a long time coming event for not only the mall and CBD businesses, but also for the whole community. And I really feel proud of Council's leadership demonstrated in the past few years, where a concerted effort was made to do something about this dying mall. After extensive community consultations, navigating through the difficult and challenging tasks of finalizing the design of the mall that reflects the community's diverse needs and aspirations, and then lobbying hard with the federal and state governments for the funding of the mall, here we are, ready to award the construction contract. We are indeed one step closer to a rejuvenated and redeveloped Mott Street Mall. Thanks to council officers for their detailed and very professional project briefings to councillors with opportunities to Q&A on various aspects of this of the construction tender process and of course the recommendations. I acknowledge that this construction tender process initially aimed to test the market for fast tracking this project, this construction, by including the option of working extended hours. However, the tender response demonstrated that the ability to accelerate this, the completion of this project through extended working hours was limited, and the additional price was not really worth the gain, as it was only bringing forward this project by 3 to 4 weeks. Now, I've also seen the probity advice that has been viewed by all councillors, and it is about the overall tender process and also whether the preferred tenderer have complied with the mandatory requirements of the tender for accreditation by the Federal Safety Commissioner under the Work Health and Safety Accreditation Scheme. The probity advice is positive and reassuring. I'm also encouraged by the strong project management methodology that was presented by the recommended tenderer, JDC, and in particular, their ability to split the whole project into two separable phases, which basically demonstrates that they have a deep understanding of one of the key requirements of this project delivery, which is to have minimum disruption to trading activities over the construction phase. So the first stage is Fraser Street, which is anticipated to be completed by the end of 2021 to allow early opening of the new playground. And then the second phase or the second stage is Mott Street and Stewart Street, due for completion by September 2022.
Would you like some additional time,
Yes,
Councillor Abdullah?
please. Thank you. So obviously, due to COVID lockdowns, it is extremely essential for the businesses to have least interruptions in the lead up to Christmas 2021. And for that, Council and JDC will have to work very closely to ensure that this expectation is managed and fulfilled. I'm very pleased to see the prospects of the project to deliver significant economic, social, and environmental benefits. And I'm confident that the preferred tenderer, JDC, will demonstrate excellence in project delivery. And the fact that they are locals is basically cherry on the cake. So well done to everyone involved in achieving a major milestone for Mott Street Mall redevelopment project. And I endorse this motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Priestley. Yes, there's probably no bigger project that has had more debate about the development of it for so long a period of time. Ever since the Mall was established, there's been debate in regards to that. And so there's probably going to be, particularly with this contract and particularly with the works that are taking place, no higher level of public expectation than what we were going to get here. No higher level of scrutiny either. And so, you know, in terms of this particular project, if you were to ask the retailers, if you ask the traders, if you were to ask general members of the public, you would have as many opinions as there would be show bags at the Shep show, because maybe not this year, but every particular person has a different view on it. So collectively, we've actually now got a design and we've got it funded. And so therefore, we've now got a fairly large contract of nearly $14 million to go ahead with it. So we've settled on this. This is okay, and we get to move on. There is a caveat on this in the sense of we need this project to be delivered on time and on budget, and with the least disruption. The least disruption to the traders and the retailers in the area, the least disruption to our customers who want, post-COVID, want to go out and Christmas shop, and also to the general public in accessing it and for entertainment, etc. So we know that there's going to be disruption, and we know that it's, you know, in the CBD of Shepparton. So taking that all on board, the contractor, and I congratulate the contractor, a local company, fantastic that it's gone local, that they need to really make sure that with their timing that they negotiate that to make sure that the absolute least amount of impact or disruption it is to them as well. So we've had our probity in it, we've had it all worked out with it. I'm pretty confident that this should be delivered on time and on budget. And as Marvin Gaye would say, let's get it on.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Would anybody like to speak against the motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Priestley. Look, I don't support the recommendation for a number of reasons, but I'll just highlight three. I don't agree with the usage of the pavers. Now, I know that we've had there's been investigations with other councils and municipalities throughout Victoria with the usage of the particular pavers that we are going to be using throughout the Mall, and due diligence and et cetera, and we were presented with specifications and et cetera on the substrates required for them. But I just don't believe in using pavers on a major road, given the fact that the emergency services and it's going to have, hopefully, we will have continual flow of traffic through the mall. That's the whole purpose of the parking and having the street access there, is to get people into the CBD area, get them into the mall. But I have some concerns about using the pavers, the increased traffic movement which is coming through there, and the sustainability and the risks of continually replacing those pavers. I think that we're probably going to have a huge stock of those pavers that we're going to replace all the time. I just have some concerns about that. I'm not a firm believer in pavers on roads. I don't think that that's the right option for us. The second one is about the timing it will take to do the construction, and Councillor Brophy pointed out before. If the successful tender, in this case, did include night works and weekend works, well, then I probably would support it. But given the fact that I'm concerned about the disruption for the traders, and I'm concerned about it actually being done on time, given the fact that the period will be extended over the winter period, next year we are going to experience a lot of wet weather coming our way, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. But I'm concerned about the traders itself. I think there are a lot of empty shops in our CBD area, and I believe that we have an obligation basically to be addressing these issues first. It's a lot of money that we're spending on a very short section of our CBD. I think that we need to invigorate and focus on some other issues first, rather than spending $13 million on a mall. So I don't support the recommendation, because I have a few concerns about what I've pointed out so far. I think there are other issues that we need to tackle first, rather than spending $13 million on a very short section of the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Would any councillor like to speak for the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Priestley. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Councillor James' concerns and also Councillor Brophy's concerns about the timing. And I think we should sheet it home very strongly that this very public piece of infrastructure will be scrutinised by our community long and hard. So especially around the 2021 Christmas period, the minimal disruption there. I can't talk about the pavers because I don't know much about them, but I'll take your advice on that. I'd like to acknowledge the Shepparton Chamber of Commerce, who have really put a lot of work into this in terms of their advice, the discussions on behalf of traders, and as been pointed out before, there are a variety of opinions about this piece of work. For example, before I was elected to council, I was strongly of the view and said publicly that I didn't think motor vehicles should be put through the mall. And I still have some reservations about it, but I like the compromise that's been made. The compromise is a single one-way lane. The parking bays are extra large. There's not too many of them. And if it's policed correctly, I believe that that will be to the advantage of shoppers. So combined with the infrastructure that's going in there, the look and feel of what the mall will be, I think we'll come out with something good. I suppose we'll all look at this with bated breath, hoping after 30 years or whatever it took to get this far, that it'll succeed. We've done a lot of work on it. We believe it's the right way to go. We believe that the design is fit for purpose, and we believe it will enhance the CBD of Shepparton. And Councillor James, I hope that, and I expect that this improvement will bring more shoppers and more traders back into the Maud Street Mall area. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion?
Would any councillor like to speak for the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Councillor Priestley. I'd just like to highlight a couple of points in the report and the project that I think are really great. I think that regardless of what option you voted for back in the day, I was never one wanting to have cars going through it either. But when you look at the plans of what it's going to look like, I think that our poor tired old mall is going to be have new life breathed into it, and it will still be a very pedestrian focused space. There has been a very strong emphasis on very low speeds. As Councillor Dobson said, the parking is drive-in, not parallel, so that it is a flow of movement. And I'm not sure who gets to be the first car down the mall, but I think we should come up with a creative way to make that happen. But I think that regardless, it's going to be a really user-friendly space for the people of the mall, and that's always got to be the most important thing. And a couple of points that I'd like to highlight is that while I'm going to say we're retaining as many of the trees as we possibly can, and where we can't, we are putting in mature ones. So we are trying to maintain that shade canopy and also the maturity of the trees as best we possibly can for that space. I know that's a concern. Also, I want to highlight that it's a council process that all the any retainable furniture or any sort of assets that are coming out of it, we do keep and we reuse, which I think is a fabulous process to always do. And I suppose just to let community know, it will happen in the 2 stages. So in the next couple of months, it will be all about bringing it back to its bare bones, which will be an interesting process in itself. And then in the next year, it's all guns blazing to get that mall done. And so hopefully this time, 2022, we are all having some sort of event in the mall to celebrate the years and years of work that have gone into this. So, and obviously the most important thing as well has been about making sure that we are not impacting those Christmas periods so that people can still get in there and support our local businesses in the CBD as well as across Greater Shepparton, but make sure it's not impacted. There's still room to walk around as well. Obviously safety for children running around and the pedestrians, as always, is a key priority. So all of these things have been considered, and I'm confident of being managed. So I look forward to a year from now having this conversation again in a completed way. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Councillor Abdullah, would you like the right of reply?
Yes and no. I mean, I was going to sort of respond to Councillor James's comments, but I think Councillor Dobson and Councillor Spinks have very nicely addressed those reservations, and I don't have anything more to say. It's just that yes, we should be looking forward to this construction project, and in the end, it will give us a mall that is not tired looking. It is user friendly. It has enough spaces for children and every member of the community to come and enjoy, relax, and shop. Basically, this space needed that kind of redevelopment. So yeah, it's don't have anything more to say. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. And just a brief comment from myself before we go to the vote. I think the CBD is a relatively small part of our overall economy, but it's a very big part in how we feel about ourselves as a community. And this is an opportunity for us to restart, reboot our CBD and how we see ourselves as a city. And I'm really looking forward to this project being completed and having a new, bigger, better CBD. We'll now go to
Deputy Mayor, Rob, if I may.
Thank you.
Just like to recognise our federal member, Damien Drum, who did a lot of work to provide the majority funding for this project, and also our state member, Susanna Sheed, who tied it up with the assistance to get the state contribution. There's a lot of federal and state money in this project, and that's very much appreciated, obviously.
Yep. Here.
Thank you, Peter, for highlighting those points. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. If we could arrange now for Mayor O'Keefe and Councillor Sali to return.
Kim's coming in. We're back.
Back. Got everyone back, yes. Councillors will now go to page 86, item 13.4, awarding of contract number 2184, asphalt surfacing and associated works, panel of contractors. There's a recommendation also on page 86. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Sali?
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move the recommendation as a motion on page 86 of the agenda, item 13.4.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Priestley? Councillor Sali, would you like to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, exactly the same circumstances as the agenda item 13.1, though in this case it's related to asphalt surfacing and associated works. Same process with advertising taking place across a number of platforms. The current contract ends on November 21, and as mentioned in the recommendation, a number of businesses have been added to the panel for a period of 2 years with an option of another year at council's discretion. The contract value is estimated at $8.4 million over the 3 years, so obviously works out to be $2.8 million a year. Same steps as before. Based on our approval this afternoon, the CEO will complete the contract. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Priestley, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Sali's covered it nicely. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 91, item 13.5, awarding of contract 2062, the Cosgrove 2 cell 4 capping construction. There's also a recommendation on page 91. Would council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Priestley?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move the recommendation as a motion 13.5 on page 91 of the agenda, that the council award contract number 2062 Cosgrove, etc., as it reads in the agenda.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sali?
I'm happy to second that motion. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Councillor Priestley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. This contract is for the supply and installation of the capping on cell 4 at the Cosgrove landfill. Cosgrove 2 has reached its design capacity in March 2020, and Apex Earthworks have been awarded a contract for $2.632 million. They were the lowest price tender and have subsequently been recommended as the tenderer. It's a reasonably major project to do this job, and an important part of the environmental management of the site, closing out that cell.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sali, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. Look, Councillor Priestley covered it pretty well, but I guess one of the most important things is if you're going to award a contract to the value of 2.6 million, you'd want to hope it goes to a local business, and that's been achieved with Apex Earthworks awarded to complete this project. So well done to those guys, and looking forward to having that project completed.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 95, which is confidential management reports. The following reports, there are attachments there designated confidential within your agenda. Item 15, documents for signing and sealing, nil received. On page 96, item 16.11, councillor activities from August 2021. There is a recommendation on page 96. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation that council receive and note the summary of the councillors' community interaction, briefing program and record of assemblies of councillors.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor James. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, just very briefly, it's pleasing again to see how much interaction, even in the period of time that we had isolation, the period of time that we had lockdown, and being such a busy time for everyone, you know, in that period of time. Incredible the amount of activities that councillors were able to be part of. And can I make a special not a recommendation, but a special acknowledgement of the councillors who weren't in isolation or weren't in lockdown and could leave their homes, that they were very much hands-on in helping the community to get through what we've got through in the last few weeks. Extraordinary. A lot of people won't know what councillors did. I certainly know a lot of what they did do. I'm probably unaware of some of the things that they did behind the scenes, but you know, it was really roll up their sleeves, get in and just help the community. And that's what this council is all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. That's probably around about a third of what we would normally do in our roles. But as Councillor Brophy said, because we've been restricted in our movements. So looking forward to moving from here and getting back to some normality, I guess, in our programs. But, you know, that's not to mention also that councillors do have portfolio positions, which we're still in contact with as well. But just to say that that's probably only 1/3 of what we normally do. It has been a busy, you know, we had a busy period in the first 6 months. We're out and about quite regularly, consistently, and now we've been hamstrung by that process. But, you know, we'll continue to go on and continue to consult with our community, which is vital, and going out in our council activities, which is which I'm looking forward to getting back into that routine. But very much essentially a part of our role. So, but as I said, Mayor O'Keefe, that's only probably a small section of what we normally have been doing. So, but it's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 98, item 6.2, council committee reports. Nil received. 16.3, notice of motion amendment or rescission. Nil received. Item 17, urgent business not included on the agenda. Nil received. And on that note, I will now declare the council meeting closed at 6 minutes past 5 p.m. Thank you very much.
And go D's.
Very good. We'll just wait until we go. We on?